Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to go over my current gear setup and my future gear plans moving forward in NGS. But before we jump to that, if you're new here, as always, my name is Chrono. I promote the cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate a subscribe as we're going towards that 10K mark, hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. Alright, so it should be pretty straightforward as far as what our future gear plans are, but I do want to let you guys know of a couple of things that I tend to do ahead of time that not everyone does, or maybe those who watch my videos don't always do, and they find themselves in positions where they're kind of missing out or they're having a rough time. It's a very common practice for me personally, or what I've always advocated for, is it's actually more advantageous for you to keep up with your gear than waiting a long time and then catching back up or skipping over things, because you end up doing a lot more in a shorter frame of time. It feels a lot worse. Granted, it ends up overall being roughly the same amount of things you do, but over a longer period of time, it tends to hurt the wallet a lot less. At least that's been my experience. And those who I have gotten to come along with that journey also have parroted the same thing once they started keeping up with their gear to a reasonable amount. And then of course, gearing, what they're going for, they found that it's a lot more freeing. You find situations where like you have overhead and you have money you're gaining that you can put towards a lot of really fun stuff, maybe some cool fashion items you always have, and you're not really having to decide on, oh, do I pick the fashion route? Do I want to get this new piece of this new piece of fashion, or can I pick up my upgraded gear? What you find is that you can afford to do everything with just a little bit of prep work ahead of time, or while you're just doing things casually on the side. So as it stands right now, I'm basically done with my gearing process. I don't need to really work on my gear at all anymore. I can pretty much kick back, relax, and enjoy myself and put money into whatever else I want. So here's what we're looking at the moment. So we've got our dual Celio blades done. And we can see that now they are sitting with hysterical, shortage, and patient defense. Granted, this isn't perfect. I'd like a different setup here. I'd like this to have historical, shortage, and what is it? Is it like, I think it's like PB something or other. Or Endure Pain PB or something like that. So that's kind of the one I'd rather have here personally, but it's not bad. Like, this is a solid spot to be in as far as I'm looking at here. And of course, I've got all of my augments that I need. I have my Grand Gladiasoul, I have my Lux Hell Finale, my Anadi Death Melra, and my Grand Dreadkeeper too. And I know you're probably thinking, man, that's a lot you've got going on there. And yeah, it is. I actually built this weapon back up from scratch. I kept my original Wingguard. I didn't augment transfer it because realistically, I didn't feel like, one, it was necessary, and two, it was really worth it for me. My Wingguard, I would needed to have swapped, or basically when I augment transferred, I would have augment transferred all these things over, but I would have needed to have swapped out the Gland Gigas Maste, one of the most expensive augments there was on this weapon. It just didn't really make much sense to me, seeing as the other two augments weren't that expensive in the first place. And the last one was a capsule, which, I mean, granted, yeah, it's going to cost you a bit, but it's not very difficult to get onto your weapon. So realistically, I'd be transferring over two augments, maybe a third. Everything else is either going to be swapped out or it's going to be basically guaranteed on there. So it just, for me personally, didn't really feel like it was worth it. So I ended up making a new weapon from scratch. So we have our dual Celio with everything we have on here. And then we've got our armor set. Everything is the same. On our Ectasis, we have Grand Gladia, Mega Trial, Lux Hell Finale, Hycovar Domina, Gland Gigas Maste, and Adi Death Melra, and Grand Dreadkeeper 2. This is basically the best in slot setup for players who are not a Slayer, essentially. Slayer like changes out one augment, realistically speaking, and that's really pretty much it. Now granted, of course, there are people that run different types of setups, tend to favor more of a tanky setup versus a more offensive setup, so on and so forth. But realistically speaking, this kind of covers all of your bases. As you can see, I have 115 HP, I have 20 plus 25 PP. I mean, I'm pretty much all good to go as far as damage to defensive ratio. We're not dealing with any negative stats. We have positive damage resistance from the augments that we have here. We're pretty much all set, which feels pretty comfortable to be in. Now, what are our plans for our gearing moving forward? Well, first off, one thing I do want to keep in mind is our number of augment transfer vouchers. So this was a common thing. People were kind of like annoyed with the transfer vouchers, saying there weren't really enough of them. I'm at 56 right now out of 100. I gather vouchers basically every day that I'm playing the game itself, and I've gathered from all of the events. I haven't gathered everything perfectly, but if we looked at the vouchers I have versus how many I've spent, I'd be about 256 vouchers, enough to transfer 2 units essentially. Now, this is before we've had any sort of events or anything along those lines that would have provided more vouchers. This is just kind of what we would have for free to play. I haven't spent any money on vouchers. Granted, you could get augment transfer passes for spending a bit more money, but I haven't spent any money on any of those things. It's just been straight up what we get for free. And I've been able to transfer 2 units because of that. Now, granted, these new units that we have here, they're not in their final form. And I get the feeling that by the time they reach that point, we're going to have an event that's going to give us enough to get that last, chunk of voucher passes, which would put us exactly at 3 from the time they announced them with the armor sets we were using beforehand, which would have been enough to transfer all of our armors. Basically all the armors without the weapon. Now, if you're someone who plays multiple classes, you use multiple weapons, so on and so forth, it kind of sucks. Totally understandable. But for me, I play one weapon, I use one class primarily, and I augment in a way that pretty much covers almost every class I would play anyway. And I wouldn't really recommend transferring a weapon personally. It kind of works out perfectly for me. Granted, I also do play the game pretty much every day, or at least every other day for the most part. So I'm able to gather what I need as far as resources are concerned. But by gathering resources, even when I don't need them, that means when they do pop up, I will be able to get a hold of them. Right now, I don't need a transfer pass. However, I'm still going to gather transfer pass vouchers. That way, when the time comes and I do need a transfer pass, I'm ready to go. I'm all set up and I'm enabled to go ahead and transfer my augment and my gear over whenever it's time to do so. But it's kind of like playing the long con. You keep gathering these up as they come available, as they pop up in, if they pop up in titles, that's something that needs to be changed. But yeah, as they pop up in titles and things of that sort, you're kind of prepared ahead of time and you're all set to go in that aspect. So that's how I'm looking at my augment transfer pass vouchers. Would it be awesome if we had more of them? Yeah, but I think honestly, you don't really need more of them just yet. 2 out of 3 of your weapons, or 2 out of 3 of your units is perfectly fine while these weapons or these units aren't finished yet. Once they're at the finish point, I suspect we'll be at the point of having enough for 3 of them. And at that point in time, you're good to go. Now, if you missed any, you weren't around for some events, it kind of sucks in that aspect for those people. Totally understandable, but this is like very high end. You don't have to build another set of units, so on and so forth. For most people, like, unless you're gearing to the same degree that I am, you don't really need to worry about a lot of these things. You can get by just remaking your stuff. The most expensive portion of this isn't really what it gets past. The augmenting, yeah, is very expensive, don't get me wrong, but like for most people, it's building the units, getting them to plus 90, limit breaking them, and all of that stuff like that tends to cut into the setup pretty heavily. The augmenting, while it is more expensive, a lot of people don't tend to get into that, and that's what this kind of helps cover. So for most of you guys, not a huge deal. Just gather your passes, and when it's time to transfer, you'll be ready to transfer. From there, we also have, this is one that I'm not the biggest fan of personally, is the, let me see, what is it called? The treasure shop, the SG treasure shop. So this is somewhere that I pretty much visit every single day. This is the reason why I don't have a ton of SG. I always have, I've got a good amount, but I'm never killing it with SG. Is because I am refreshing the shop every single day. And the reason I refresh the shop every day is for things like an augmentation success rate plus 20%, as well as, I'll pull them up here if I can remember to do so, if I can remember how to use my own keyboard. This is why I'm getting a new one. This isn't why I'm getting a new one, but I need to get a new one. And augment protects. So this is one thing that I feel like is never enough of these. The thing, the reality in the situation is that this isn't really fair for free to play. This is more of like a premium player sort of thing. As a free to play, you don't get access to a lot of an augmentation transfer, or an augmentation protects. If I was free to play personally, I would probably hold off of any augment that's like above 1 mil for the most part. If the augment drops below 1 mil, it's totally fine. That means it's 10 mil to get 10 of them. So like I can live with the actual, the RNG aspect of it. But when you're going to augments that are above like 3 to 8 mil and things of that sort, like that's where you're like, you want to use a protect, realistically speaking, because the value of these protects are anywhere between like, I'd say 3 to 5 mil. Once you get to that point, at that point in time, it's worth, in my opinion, to go ahead and either hold off of the augment or only use protects on them. So things like, Grand Dread Keeper 2, when it first came out, that's something as a free to play I probably wouldn't have augmented. I would have held off of getting to that augment until it brought down in price. The rest of those items are kind of like below 1 mil, stuff like that. That's totally fine and reasonable. But like as a free to play, you don't get a lot of these, and it's totally unfair that you don't. Honestly, I feel like this shop is something that needs to be changed. I would like to see this be like maybe just one of these 2 slots be premium and the rest of these be free to play. I know some people are like, oh, it'd be better if it was just like it showed up everywhere else, like you were able to get it in these bottom slots. That'd be cool too, because it'd be great for me as well. However, I'm not gonna, I kind of want to come to like a middle ground, like a consensus, right? And I feel like having it, having premium locked out of both of these slots. Specifically, you're already locked out of a lot of the refreshes. But having you guys locked out of both of those slots and having them only pop up in both of those slots just seems unreasonable. Maybe give it a third slot and make that slot like, you know, premium-esque, freemium if you will. Or I mean, it could be like even double the price. If it's like 100, maybe make it 200 for free, you know, and then, you know, if someone really wants to get them and they're playing as paid, they can of course, you know, spend some more star gems, something along those lines, just to kind of make it a bit more fair across the board, because I feel like it is kind of lame to not have this available for free to play, but that is something that I collect every single day. It's why I don't have a ton of star gems. I have enough star gems to go ahead and feed that sort of beast. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, you can stack up tons of star gems because you don't have to worry about spending star gems on things like material storage and things like that. I'm gonna give you a newsflash. I wouldn't spend money on material storage anyway. Material storage is something now that's given out in a way that is free enough. It's not as good as it was previously. Now it's more in the favor of star gems than the material storage, meaning you have a bit more agency over your star gems. But at the end of the day, before I was given this, I still just spent star gems I got for free playing the game, getting the material storage. And you just heard me say, hey, I wouldn't buy it anyway. I wouldn't buy it now since they give it to you for free. Before, there was no way for you to get it unless you paid with star gems. Now they give you tickets as a part of this process, meaning that you can just pop a ticket, throw everything into there and call it a day. I basically would just crowd all my stuff into like either a character storage or maybe like I'd say a premium storage, but free to play. So let's toss in like a character storage or maybe like a secondary character or something along those lines. And I'd pop a ticket, jump to that character and throw everything in. That's basically how I would do things, honestly, if I was in free to play, but just keeping that in mind as far as what we're looking at, it's just something that realistically I do when it comes to my star gems. So you'll never see them be very high. Now, if you're someone that's like, oh, but I pull on the star gem scratch, there's nothing I can do for you there. Realistically speaking, that's going to cost you star gems. You're missing out on some things there. So it's up to you at the end of the day. So it's your play, how you want to go about it. Now, as far as the weapons that we currently have, so this is everything I've talked about has been like saving things up when it comes to, you know, in kind of a general sense, right? Like building your weapons, having your augment passes, having your augment protect, so on and so forth. This is gonna be a bit more specific. So we're gonna start out with newer augments that are coming out. Now, I'm going to say this, I'm gonna preface this by letting you guys know I have no information of what is coming out under any circumstances. This is all 100% guesswork. It is just educated guesswork based on what we have already experienced so far. And now, in a lot of cases, PSO2 does leave some precedents for us. There's not really a precedent here. This is more just like, it makes sense to be the next thing. So just take this with a grain of salt. As far as our augments go, we now know that PSO2 is not opposed to just releasing a second version of an augment. We have Grand Dread Keeper 2 here. Before it was Grand Dread Keeper, and they changed it to Grand Dread Keeper 1 because Grand Dread Keeper 2 was also coming out. So we are not opposed to having a second version of this, which to me means that we could see a Lux Hal Finale, a Grand Gigas Maste, or a Grand Dread Keeper 2. Now, Lux Hal Finale, Grand Gladius Soul, and Grand Gigas Maste are all single versions. As far as what we're looking at here, the oldest of these is our Lux Hal Finale. I think it's either a Grand Gigas Maste or Lux Hal Finale, one of those two. But these are also things that have been dropping in recent quests. We've been getting Gigas Mastes. We've been getting Hal Finales. Making Lux Hal Finale, making Grand Gigas Maste has been easier. Because of that, if we are to see a new augment pop up, I personally believe it's going to be one of two, maybe one of three. We're going to see either a new version of Lux Hal Finale, a new version of Grand Gigas Maste, or what's even more possible is a new version of a Domina. I don't believe we have a high steer Domina yet. Pretty sure that's not a thing, or else I would have probably looked at it. But yeah, we don't have a high steer Domina yet. There's a possibility that could show up. It could be an upgraded version of High Kavari. We don't really know what the actual Domina could end up being. So my thought process is maybe this slot specifically with the Domina, we might see an upgrade to a Domina there, or between Lux Hal Finale and Grand Gigas Maste. Because of that, we've had quests that drop a lot of these things here. I stock up on those resources, the resources it takes to make Lux Hal Finale, the resources it takes to make Grand Gigas Maste. That way, when those new augments come out, we can make them and make the upgraded versions right then and there. And because we also stocked up on our protects, we also stocked up on our 20%, we can go ahead and make those augments, and then everything else while it's being made, while it's currently, you know, the top dollar thing, sell all of the excess resources, all of them. Right now, while they're dropping, yeah, you could sell them, you can make some money, but realistically speaking, when they actually are of use is when people are going to start paying more money for them. So we're going to hoard them. I couldn't think of the word. We're going to hoard them now, and then we're going to sell all of them later. Now, it's a situation where it's up to you. At the end of the day, it could be like, hey, this new thing is the new thing that's really awesome, but we also released a quest that drops a ton of them, right? So now they're not worth a whole lot. That's something that you kind of have to keep in mind. It's something I'm sure the market boys probably upset me even saying, but something you have to keep in mind that's going to be a bit of a gamble for you. You could also go the route some people do where they purchase a bunch of things at a lower rate while they're cheaper, and then they wait till later to sell them higher. It is a very common practice. People call it gouging or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's another way people tend to use the market. You buy while the demand isn't super high. And once the demand gets much higher, you then put the prices higher, so on and so forth. Well, gouging is more like buying out stock and then just forcing the prices higher, but it's also on how people tend to talk about it. So you can purchase it while it's low and then sell it while it's high. That's a pretty common market tactic that's used in all types of video games that have a market. So just keep that in mind as far as what you're looking at. But if you're like me, just hold on to this stuff. Yeah, it's going to burn a hole in your pocket. Yeah, you could make some more money right now and use it for something. But keep in mind, if you're like me, there's nothing you need to buy. You have your gear, you have your weapon, you have your unit. At the end of the day, if I really want to get more power, the best I could do would be to get level 5 Orgus, which give me 1% more on my Photon Blast charge gate. Would be to get level 5 Fix Attack, which would, bump this up to, I believe, what, like 9% or something like that. I don't remember what Fix a 5 is exactly, but this would bump up my potency here. I could bump this up to, Blaster 5. Cool. That'd be super awesome to have that done. But realistically speaking, it's not a massive change. When it happens, it happens. It's RNG for me right now. Everything else, I'm just making the money off of it or stocking it up for the next time that I need to use those specific resources. And that's it. Nothing crazy, nothing state of the art. Don't need to bust out the wallet and spend tons and tons of money. I know people always have the mindset that they have to swipe to be able to have access to all these things. The last time I swiped, and I swiped to make money for gear, like that I really needed the money to set my gear up, was probably back in April. It's currently October. Now, granted, yes, I did swipe during the collab scratch, the Eminence and Shadow collab scratch. But what I purchased with that were all of the dodges, the motions, and everything else, and these camos that were very expensive at the time. Like, I spent 45 mil on this camo, which is much cheaper now, by the way. I spent like 45 mil on this camo. I spent like another 30 mil on another camo. And then I spent anywhere between 10 to 15 mil on the glides, dashes, and all that stuff. So that's where all of that money went to. Last time money was spent on like gear after scratching was literally back in April. I haven't even spent money on any of the most recent scratches that have even been worth it. So just keep it in mind. You don't have to. As long as you do a bit of prep work, you're totally fine. Now, the last bit of prep that I'm going to recommend, and this one's the most important, I feel like it depends on you individually when it comes down to it as far as your gearing process goes, but we know what it's going to take to upgrade our units. And we have a farm that's available to go ahead and do so. Now I'm going to pop back over here really quick and I'll show you guys what I mean. And here I am in Stia real quick. So we did recently get Mediola Outer Area 1 revamped. So yes, this area is where you farm the resources for the new stuff. This is where you farm the resources for the weapon, getting your grinders as well as your evil items. Evil items drop from trials, the grinders drop from enemies here. And I know some people are like, oh, well, the grind just doesn't seem to be, tailored to it properly. I'll be honest with you, and this is going to sound kind of harsh, you're using the zone wrong. Like, it's tailored to 3 individual farms all in the same spot, and they're all very good, actually. You can kill dreads in this area to get Dreadkeeper 5 and make quite a bit of money selling that if you really want to. You can also farm for your weapon, whether it is you farm trials or enemies there. I was getting, and this is with a random group, by the way. So I actually I got more grinders in a random group in this area. I just ran around killing enemies. We popped all of our, all the boosts we had. So I'll show you guys the boosts we were running at the time. So I popped, of course, experience because I wanted to get to level 95. We popped a rare drop rate plus 100% and a tri boost plus 20%. And that was it. And we farmed for an hour and we got 100 grinders by just farming enemies. We didn't pivot to any sort of trials. We didn't pivot to doing anything else. We ignored everything and simply farmed enemies. We got 100 grinders in that hour. Second hour we did it, I actually went into a passworded room. So people are like, oh, you have to have a group to do things like that. You don't. We went into a passworded room. I invited some people from my stream. I think there was a total of like maybe 9 or 10 of us, maybe a bit more. Still made 94 grinders. So like I still got a ton of grinders even in a personal room. So you could go into a passworded room, you can go into a random room, and it's totally fine. Just farm enemies and you'll get tons and tons of grinders. Now, why am I focusing on grinders? Well, because we already know from the headline that grinders are going to be needed for the units as well. It's 100 grinders per unit. And you can farm that really quickly. As you guys heard from me, it took me about 2 hours overall to farm the grinders I needed for just my weapon. And if I grind for another 3 hours, let's round up and say 4. Let's say maybe you're not as lucky as I am. Maybe you didn't get as many grinders. Maybe you don't have access to as many, drop rate boost amounts. So you farm an extra hour or so. It would take you for your weapon and 3 units total. Let's estimate maybe 5, most 7 hours, right? If you're lucky and you're getting them back to back, it'll take you 5 hours. If you're a little unlucky, you maybe don't have as many boosters, maybe you're closer to 7, maybe 8 hours. 8 hours is not an unreasonable ask to farm these. And I'll tell you right now, it's likely that when they release the upgraded version of Nuisance Plan and Deck Space, these grinders are going to be even easier to farm because these 2 zones have PSE bursts. And if these are dropping off of enemies, they're going to drop a lot of them during a PSE burst. So just keep that in mind as far as grinding your stuff. You can grind it now if you want to, and I think it's totally reasonable to go ahead and get that grind done. It might be a situation where the trials in those zones are the ones that are dropping, dropping tons and tons and tons of resources for the items that you need, but not tons of the grinders. And getting grinders is just killing enemies, and it might be more difficult to do that in one of those combat zones as opposed to what we're doing it right now, where nothing else is affected. People are going to be a little weird about the combat zones, and it's only 8-man zones. So just keep that in mind. You can farm that ahead of time. This is part of like the whole, hey, you can grind this now and you can grind it slower over time because we've got some time. Putting an hour in each day over the course of the next week will give you enough time to grind out the number of grinders you need before the weapon or before the units even come out. Just keep that in mind. Then you spend maybe, I don't know, an hour when the actual update comes out and you have all of your units done. Now you're ahead of the curve. You can wait. That's totally fine. Totally understandable. I know a lot of people did, but if you're like me and you have the time and you want to play, you can get a lot done by just doing a little bit of prep work ahead of time. And that's it. Those are my plans as far as what I'm looking at for as far as gearing goes. I'll be doing a bit of prep work over the course of the week ahead of time. Make sure we have a lot of our grinders ready. We'll jump into the new zone and get the rest of what we need. We'll finish up our units and then we'll wait for the next update and chill and enjoy ourselves until then. Maybe we'll focus on making some money. That way we can have some more money available to us. Maybe we'll go play SEO. Who knows? But let me know what you guys have planned in the comments below. Either way, guys, like if you enjoyed the video. So if you want to keep up with more. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic. And I appreciate every single one of you guys. And I will see you all next time. Take care, my friends. Peace out.